Hey guys, it's mcfixit here. We're going to be working on a plastic weld. We're on my dad's boat, and the push key with the choke starter just completely broke off, and so we're going to spend some time taking it off. I'm going to show you all the tools and the supplies I'm going to be using and weld this piece of plastic back on because it's just some brittle plastic being out here in the sun in Florida. And so I'm going to show you all the tools, supplies, and steps on how to fix this yourself. Here are the tools and the supplies that I used for this. You're going to want some kind of welding kit. This is from Harbor Freight. You can find them lots of different places. Comes with a lot of different things. Your soldering iron, a mesh. It will come with a couple pieces of plastic, which is good because it does allow you to repair a lot of different types of plastic. It will give you a scraper tool. Then they will give you, I bought some extra rods that you can use with different colors. So if yours is a particular color that's not black, you can get that. It's fairly inexpensive. Phillips screwdriver for this application. You are going to want some tin snips that will really help cut the metal. Then I also had a pair of needle nose pliers I used to just kind of tighten back up everything at the end. So the first thing you're going to need is your Phillips screwdriver. You got 4 Phillips screws. You're going to go ahead and unscrew this. Just like this. You got 4 of them. And I am going to take this plate off and take it out into the garage just to get a little bit better ability to weld it. You could weld it right here, but it's just not going to be as clean of a plastic weld. And so we'll just continue to unscrew. And your kill switch will just kind of sit off to the side here just for a second. So you got your kill switch here. We're going to go ahead and slide this just as if like it would fall off. And then you have this little plastic nut in here, and you're just going to spend some time spinning this off towards you, lefty loosey, righty tighty. And then that is the plastic piece we need. And then we're also going to need this other plastic piece. So we're going to go ahead and spin this nut. Same concept as the other one. And go ahead and spin this off. And we will go ahead and keep this all right here, and we'll need to plastic weld this piece right back in. So save your nuts. And great. One thing to note on this before we go in the garage is you have this flat piece here, and you also have this flat piece right inside here. And so you're going to want this to be going straight up. And so you can either mark it with a Sharpie or just know this piece needs to go straight up. So when you have your key, it goes straight in, and then you're able to turn it over. We will go ahead and start that plastic weld. Then this is just some cheap Harbor Freight little plastic welder, and it has pretty much everything you need. So it has the soldering iron with the correct tip, the mesh, some pieces of plastic, a scraper to go ahead and scrape. And it has a nice little tray you can sit on. You can also buy these there too if you have a specific color you need, but that has black in it. So that's what we're going to focus on getting out. So this is a brand new one. I've used these before. You can see some of my other videos on my channel. So go ahead and use a little twisty tie. Go ahead and take it off. And so you can go ahead and plug that into your outlet. But before you do that, go ahead and get the stand ready. So it is on a stand. And all you're going to need is one piece. And so then remember that part that was flat goes towards the top. And so it will go in and sit like this in there. Again, that flat piece is on the top. So you're going to go ahead and pull out your tin snips, and the goal of this is you're going to try to put it back down and then weld the side here, pretty much get the plastic melted and put it in. So we're going to do probably 4 little strips. This is about 2 inches high by about 2 inches, and then we will cut this in half, and then we'll get another one of these and do the same thing again. So just to get us set up. So they'll be just roughly about 1 inch by 2 inches, all 4 of the strips. Fold them at a 90-degree angle and cut off the excess. Just once we kind of get where each one of them will go. So just like that. Then we'll get this next one set up. And you'll just kind of trim these as needed. And I think I'm going to put this one sideways because we do have a lot bigger area here. But then just kind of fold this into a 90 degree. And then we'll have that one other. And you'll start to smell your soldering iron with that kind of flat tip as you continue to do this. That means it's heating up. And especially if you've gone and done any plastic welding before, it definitely will start smelling. You can also clean it off if you've used it before. Go ahead and use the brush.
Give it at least 5 minutes to warm up.
One thing I don't know if I mentioned, you want to keep your hand on this side, keep it on those black pieces, because it is very warm and it can melt your hand. And so the goal of this is just to get it started to kind of tack into the plastic. And then we will cover it with more plastic later. You can start to see right there, it's starting to do exactly what we want, which is kind of go down into the plastic. And so this is kind of older plastic. It's about a 20-year-old boat. And so sitting out in the sun, it definitely can kind of warp over time. So make sure you always cover your boat. That was a freebie tip. But yeah, heat and sun and black out in the sun is just, it's gonna melt over time and crack. And so this is where I go ahead, now that it's tacked in a little bit, I go ahead and begin to melt this. And it doesn't really matter what kind of plastic. There's a bunch of types out there, and I know a lot of these will actually put a few different types of plastic in it. And the reason for doing that is, the other thing is you don't want to inhale these. They put different types of plastic in because it will help hold and shape into the different types of plastic. And so it's just kind of mounding it up. You don't have to do it super, super thick, but just a good coat will really kind of keep it and kind of lock it in place for lots of future use on plastic. And this little tip is, the little tip on this is really nice because it does kind of help hold it all together. Be in a well-ventilated area as well. Do not be in like your house and do this. A garage is a great place with the garage door open, because again, you don't want to be inhaling a lot of burnt plastic. And so this kind of just fuses it all together. This really does help just kind of make it solid again. And so when we get done, I'll kind of test it and show you how solid it has become, just by adding a few pieces of metal and adding this just a little bit of extra plastic filler. If you did have a large area on the back that you wanted the same color, you could pull from that area. Like if you're working on something that has a lot of extra plastic on the back. But because this does not have much extra, I'm going to be careful and not pull it from other places. Like you could cut some of this off from different areas if it just had a bunch of excess plastic, but so that is on there pretty good. You do want to make sure it melts, or not, doesn't melt, it hardens properly before you get done and touch any of it, and you can kind of smooth it all out as well, just like that. And then we'll let that part harden. We'll go ahead and start working on the next piece. And I probably bumped all of these off from what I originally had, but that's okay. So there's a little bit of a hump right here. So that's really what we're gonna focus on, trying to get through this metal piece. To help bring it and get that little bit of extra stability. But I'm amazed what this little bit of metal mesh can do for you. I will say be careful that you don't melt the screw holes. That'll be really important that you do not melt those as you're doing this, because that is what holds it in and onto the boat. So you're just kind of pushing the plastic down, and it's kind of sinking it into the plastic beneath that original plastic. And then it kind of gives it just like a little bit of a layer. That's what you're going for each and every time. You do want to be careful not going too much into the original plastic, because you can put a hole in it and that's not what you want, but you can fill it back up pretty easily with this stuff. And so just take your time. It's obviously a lot different than metal welding, but this stuff really does help give a nice firm grasp on the plastic, and just kind of helps repair instead of having to go buy a whole new one of these, because knowing that it's about 20 years old, it might be really hard to find a very similar one. Might not be, but you might get lucky. I think this one went here. I'm going to fold this the other way. So just like that. And then we'll go ahead and add some of the new plastic and melt all that down. Go ahead and put another piece in right there too. Just to build it up a little bit. And you really can build this up as much as you want. If it's helpful to just put a whole bunch down, just make sure you're melting all the way through to that base layer, and do it kind of in slow amounts. But if you really want to make sure, like, this is not something you want. We were out fishing when this happened, and is not something you want happening. So we do want to make sure we get a really good repair on this. We were able to just kind of take it off because we had some screwdrivers on board, which is very, very smart to always have a little toolkit whenever you're out fishing or whatever you're doing, just even boating. I think I'm going to use a couple of pieces of this scrap to finish this area up. I don't like how I cut this one, so we'll add just a couple pieces of scrap. And remember, this is very hot. You don't want to burn yourself, so do use some patience and be very careful. One thing about these kits is you don't get a whole lot of metal, so you may want to be sparing of it. Like, I like to save a lot of these scraps for future uses. If it's like this small, I probably won't, but just so you always have that available if you need it for another project. So this isn't always the prettiest method, but it for sure works. So, and it saves a lot of money. So instead of buying all these plastic components again, you can just do a little bit of a weld job, and I think it was around 16, 17 bucks for the kit. So I'll link a description down below for that as well. Don't know if I'll be able to put a Harbor Freight link in, but I'll at least put an Amazon link to something very similar. I've bought one of these off Amazon before, and it is pretty much identical, just has a different name. They're all made overseas if you're in the United States. So if you wanted to buy US made, you'll have to do some searching for that probably. So we're gonna let that go ahead and sit for a few seconds. Then I'm gonna do a little bit of a test. And so you can't even tell it really has broken on the inside. But you don't really want to weld much of the inside due to the fact that you have that nut and you want to be able to put that on. But this thing is very hot. We're kind of right next to the sun where Florida is, and it gets really, really hot. And so this will take a good solid minute or two to cool down. I am going to keep that running in the background just for another minute while this thing cools, but you may need to lift it or put it near a fan if you want to get it cooled really quick. But you can just tell that is really solid. I mean, I'm pushing that with everything I got, that it's not going anywhere. So that right there fixed it. If you want to clean it up, you can, but it's on the inside, so it doesn't really matter. I guess you could, if you wanted to, hit the inside of this up with that. I am not gonna do that because I know the plastic had melted through good enough and that metal had kind of just welded it all together. So we'll go ahead and put this back on and make sure everything works how it's supposed to. Okay, let's go ahead and start putting this back together. Remember, you had those two nuts, and so we're gonna go ahead and just stick this back in. And so same thing with it, it will have a flat spot on it, and that will go right there. So just like that, and then you're gonna go ahead and grab the nut and spin it on there. Hopefully, there it goes. Then you can go ahead and grab this and go ahead and kind of pull it towards you. And we did turn the kill switch off on this just so we know there's no power because you are reaching behind. And so you're just spinning that down. If you do have a pair of needle nose, you also can stick that in. Most good fishermen have a pair of needle nose sticking around for when you go ahead and stick a fishing hook way down a fish's mouth and you need something to go ahead and pull it out. So you don't have to kill it. It's plastic. You don't want to re-break it. And then that is perfect. We'll go ahead and get your screwdriver and get your 4 screws. So go ahead and line it up and go ahead and start one of your screws. You only need to get in about 1/3 of the way. Go ahead and grab the next one. Make sure it's nice and lined up. You don't want to crank down on any of these. This is all plastic. We are going to make sure it's at least hand tight, but nothing crazy. So now we're going to go ahead and kind of tighten them down. So I'm just going to where it's a little bit snug, and then one little quarter turn after that. And then we'll go ahead and plug the rest of this in. So this just slides over. That's your kill switch. And we'll go ahead and clip this guy back on.
Can you go ahead and turn the switch back on so we can power it up here in a second?
And then you can go ahead and put your key back in. And then that is all set. We'll go ahead and try it. And so it all works again, just like it should. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope this was helpful. If you have any comments, go ahead and put them down below.